Hello students. Today we're going to look at solving and graphing one-step inequalities. Now this lesson is going to be divided up into several sections, so just going to be prepared for that. So we're going to work a little bit, and then we'll have you do an activity. And then you'll see the answers to the activity in the next video. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is review solving equations. Okay, so I've given you just two-step equations, or actually one's a one-step, one's a two-step equation. So what I'd like for you to do is pause the video and solve these two questions. Okay, so let's see how you did. Now, if you remember correctly, in order to solve equations, we've got three basic steps. Get your letters on one side, get your numbers on the other, and for both of those, you add the opposite, and then you solve. Okay, so in this first one here, we have x plus 5 is equal to negative 10. So if you'll notice, we've got one letter. Okay, this letter right here, since we've only got one letter, that means the letters are together. So all I have to do is get my numbers over to the other side. Okay, and the way we do that is we add the opposite. So we get x plus 5, and then to get rid of this plus 5, we're going to do a plus negative 5. Okay, which is equal to negative 10. And if I add one thing to one side, I've got to add the same exact thing to the other. So since I added a negative 5 to the left, I've got to add a negative 5 to the right. So now these 5's go away, and I'm left with x is equal to, and then negative 10 plus negative 5 gives me negative 15. And our goal is to get x by itself, and we did. Okay, so that means our answer is done. So now you could take this negative 15 and plug it back in to the equation. Negative 15 plus 5, does that give me negative 10? Yes, it does. Okay. Now, in this second equation, it's a little bit tougher. You'll notice we've got 14 plus negative or minus 2x there. Okay, so there's a couple things that are wrong. One, we've got a minus here. And two, our number or our letter part is second. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is, since you know I don't like subtraction, I'm going to change the subtraction to addition, next number to its opposite. And now if I want to, I can switch this around into negative 2x plus 14 equals negative 8. Okay, so now what I want to do is I need to get my letters by themselves. So if you'll notice, I've only got one letter though. I've only got this negative 2x, and that's all I have. Okay, so now all I need to do then is move my numbers over to the other side, and we do that by adding the opposite. So negative 2x plus 14 plus negative 14, 14 equals negative 8 plus negative 14. Okay, my 14's go away, and I'm left with negative 2x is equal to, and now we have negative 8 plus negative 14, which we know gives us negative 22 if we add those together. Okay, so now to get rid of a multiply by 2, I do a divide by 2, and since it's a negative 2, I divide by a negative 2. I divide the other side by a negative 2, and I end up with x is equal to, well, negative 22 divided by negative 2 gives me positive 11. Now I could plug that back into the original equation. Okay, and that was what the original equation is 14 minus 2x. So we could do 14 minus 2 times 11 equals negative 8. Well, 14 minus, and then 2 times 11 is 22. So if we do 14 minus 22, do we get negative 8? Yes, we do. Okay, so that's reviewing one-step and two-step equations. Now, what if I gave you multi-step equations? Okay, what about this first one here? We got 3x plus 5 is equal to x plus 9 plus 2x minus 4. Okay, so in this particular one right here, hopefully you see that there is some pre-work. Okay, on the left-hand side, and I'm going to kind of do this over here, right over in this section so that I've got room to work. Okay, so my left-hand side stays as 3x plus 5. Okay, but my right-hand side, if you'll notice, I've got an x and a 2x, which could make 3x plus, and then the 9 and the 4 could go together also, but this 4 is a minus 4, so that would be plus and negative. So 9 and plus negative 4 gives me 5. Okay, so now if you notice this, okay, so we've got some red flags going off, I hope. A 3x and a 3x, so that tells me that my variables are going to go away. So if I start here on the left and move this 3x over, I'll get 3x plus negative 3x plus 5. And then on the left-hand side, 3x plus 5 plus the negative 3x that I added on the left. Well, my 3x's go away here, and I'm left with 5 equals. My 3x's go away here, and I'm left with 5. So is 5 equals 5? Yes, it is. Okay, so what do we say then about 5 equals 5? We say all real numbers. Right? Now, in this other one, okay, I'm hoping that you also see that we've got the 5x's. So the first thing I'm going to do is change that subtraction to addition next to its opposite. And I'm going to get rid of the 5x's. So 5x plus negative 5x plus 2. 5x plus negative 8 plus negative 5x. My 5x's go away and I'm left with negative 8. My 5x's go away and I'm left with 2. So what do we know about a false statement? Well, we know that we cross out the equal sign and we say no solution. Okay, so those are some of the abnormalities that will happen. And that's how we solve equations. So I'm hoping you remember all that, especially since we just had a test over that this last week. Okay, so let's move on then. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at inequalities. So you will learn to, in this very first section, learn to read and write inequalities and then graph them on a number line. And that will be on the second part of the lesson. Okay, so let's move into inequalities. So we've got some vocabulary that we have to know. We've got just inequality. We have algebraic inequality. We have a solution set. And we have something called a compound inequality, which is what we've got to learn about today. Okay, so let's first talk about inequality. So I want you to write this down in your notes. It says an inequality states that two quantities either are not equal or may not be equal. Okay, an inequality uses one or more of the following symbols. So what I need for you to write today is I need you to write from the and all the way to the period. Write that in your notes. I'll give you a few moments to do that. Okay. Now it says an inequality uses one of the following symbols. So this first symbol right here is called a less than symbol. Okay, this second symbol is called a greater than symbol. The third one is called a less than or equal to. And the last one is a greater than or equal to. So some words that represent each of these symbols for less than would be fewer than, below. For greater than would be things like more than or above. Okay, less than or equal to would be at most, no more than. In other words, the number that we have is going to be smaller than the maximum. Okay, and then the last one is greater than or equal to, which is at least or no less than. Okay, so those are some words that we can use to kind of represent these particular inequalities. And that's what we're going to do first, learn to read and write them. Okay, so here is a couple of examples. It says, write an inequality for each situation. It says there are at least 15 people in the waiting room. Okay, so when you think about it, in a waiting room, at least 15 people. So that means that we would have 15 or more. Okay, so 15 or more. So if we were to look at this word phrase right here, at least, if we were to go back, at least refers to what? Greater than or equal to. Okay, so that's what we're looking for in this particular one. Okay, so how do I then write a situation about this? Well, what you do is you first pick a variable. Okay, I'm going to use P for people. And it says that there are at least 15 people in the waiting room. So I'm going to take the 15, put it on the other side, and then we're going to put an inequality symbol in the middle of that, where it says that these people here are at least 15, so that means it's going to be greater than or equal to 15. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing. So let's look at another one here. A tram attendant will allow no more than 60 people on the tram. Okay, so again, I'm going to use people, and I'm going to write the number down, 60. Now it says the tram attendant will allow no more than 60 people. So that means that 60 is a maximum number. Okay, but can it be 60? Well, it says no more than 60, so that means you could have 60. You just can't have 61. Okay, so that means that this P right here has got to be less than or equal to 60 in order for it to be a true statement. So the number of people have to be less than or equal to, no more than 60 people. Okay, so I'm going to have you try a couple of these on your own. So what I'd like for you to do is write for me an inequality statement that models each of these situations. Take a few seconds to do that. Okay, so first thing you do is you pick a variable. So A here it says, there are at most 10 gallons of gas in the tank. Okay, so we're talking about gallons of gas. I'm going to call it G. Okay, then you take the 10 and you write it down. And it says there is at most 10 gallons. So that means the 10 is kind of the top number, at most 10. Okay, so that means the 10 is the amount of gallons is at least, or at most 10, because that 10 is going to be our top number. Okay, so that means the gallons of gas that you have, that's the highest, so it's got to be less than that. Okay, and then this last one down here says there is at least 10 yards of fabric left. Okay, so again, I'm going to use F this time for fabric. Okay, and again, we've got a 10, and it says there's at least 10 yards of fabric left. So that means the 10, it could be there, but there's also more than that. There's at least 10, so it could be 11 or 12. So that means the fabric's got to be greater than or equal to 10, because at least means that 10 is a minimum number. The at most up here in the top, at most, is a maximum number. Okay? So what I'd like for you to do, we're going to do a little activity here. So I want you to number your paper from 1 to 9. Okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to read each one of these statements, and you're going to give me an inequality statement that represents that situation. Okay? Now, you'll hear the answers to this in the next video. So that's kind of the thing about this particular lesson. You're going to watch a little segment, do a little activity. Watch a little segment, do a little activity. Okay? So here's the activity for this segment. So this video is going to stop, and I want you to answer these questions. And in the next video, we'll start off by talking about the answers. Okay?